When my daughter Lisa said, "She's fine, Mum, stop being so dramatic," I backed down like I always did. 3 hours later, I was standing in my car outside their house on Christmas morning, discovering my 5-year-old granddaughter Emma shivering on the front porch in nothing but pajamas. Lisa was about to learn that underestimating a 72-year-old retired school principal was the biggest mistake of her life. The temperature was 18 degrees. I could see my breath forming clouds in the frigid December air as I rushed toward Emma, her tiny frame hunched against the cold wooden steps. Her lips were blue, her fingers white as snow. Inside the house I could hear laughter, music, and the clink of glasses. A Christmas party was in full swing while my granddaughter sat outside like discarded garbage. "Grandma Margaret?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper, her teeth chattering so violently she could hardly speak. I scooped her into my arms, feeling how cold her little body had become. Her skin was like ice against mine. "You're safe now, sweetheart," I whispered, wrapping my wool coat around her trembling form. Through the frosted window, I could see Lisa dancing with her boyfriend Derek, both holding wine glasses, surrounded by friends. 20 adults inside celebrating Christmas, and not one had noticed a child missing. I carried Emma to my car, turning the heat to maximum. As warmth slowly returned to her cheeks, I asked the question that would change everything. "How long were you out there, honey?" "Since Santa time," she said, meaning midnight. 5 hours. My granddaughter had been outside in freezing weather for 5 hours while her mother partied. I pulled out my phone and took photos of Emma's condition, her blue-tinged skin, the house with party lights blazing while she sat forgotten in the cold. Something hardened inside me that morning. Something that had been building for months of watching Lisa's neglect, her boyfriend's cruelty, their entitled assumption that family meant nothing. They had no idea what was coming. As I drove Emma to the hospital, she told me things that made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time. Derek had started locking her outside whenever she bothered them during parties. Lisa went along with it, calling it teaching her independence. The doctors found early signs of frostbite on Emma's toes. "Your daughter needs to be reported," Dr. Sarah Chen said quietly, reviewing Emma's medical chart. "This level of exposure could have killed her." I nodded, watching Emma sleep peacefully under heated blankets, finally warm and safe. But I wasn't just thinking about this incident. I was remembering patterns. The bruises Lisa explained away as playground accidents. Emma's constant hunger when she visited me, as if she wasn't being fed regularly. The way she flinched when adults raised their voices. The expensive toys Lisa bought herself while Emma wore clothes that were too small. My phone buzzed. "Lisa. Where did you take Emma? Bring her back now." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. For 38 years I'd enabled my daughter's selfishness, cleaned up her messes, made excuses for her behaviour. Not anymore. I typed back, "Emma is safe, we need to talk." Her response was immediate. "Don't you dare try to parent me. She's my daughter." That word, parent, almost made me laugh. When had Lisa ever actually parented Emma? Dr. Chen returned with paperwork. "Child Protective Services will need to interview Emma tomorrow. Are you prepared to take temporary custody?" I looked at my granddaughter's peaceful face and felt a fierce protectiveness I hadn't experienced since Lisa was small. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared for whatever it takes." But I wasn't prepared for what I discovered next. Back at my house with Emma safely tucked into the guest room, I started making calls. My first was to Patricia Williamson, the best family attorney in the state, and my former colleague from the school board. The second was to my neighbour, retired police detective Frank Morrison. "Margaret, what you're describing constitutes child endangerment at minimum," Patricia said over the phone. "With the medical documentation, we have a solid case for emergency custody, but there's more you should know about your daughter." That phrase, "there's more," sent chills down my spine. "What do you mean?" "Let me do some research. Can you meet me tomorrow?" I agreed, though something in her tone suggested I wasn't going to like what she found. Frank arrived within an hour, his investigator instincts sharp despite retirement. "I ran Derek Morrison through our database," he said, settling into my kitchen chair. 3 prior arrests for domestic violence, 2 for fraud, currently on probation. Your daughter is living with a career criminal, Margaret. The room seemed to spin. Lisa had introduced Derek as a successful businessman. I'd even lent them $5,000 last month for what Lisa called a business investment. Now I was seeing the truth. My money had probably gone to Derek's legal fees or worse. "There's something else," Frank continued. "Your daughter applied for 3 credit cards using Emma as a co-signer. Identity theft involving a minor carries serious federal penalties." I sat in stunned silence. Lisa hadn't just neglected Emma. She'd been systematically exploiting her. My 5-year-old granddaughter was already a victim of financial fraud, and her own mother was the perpetrator. My phone rang. Lisa's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, her tone had shifted from demanding to panicked. "Mom, please call me back. We can work this out. Derek says you're overreacting, but maybe we can find a compromise." A compromise? About child abuse? That's when I knew exactly how far I was willing to go. Emma woke up asking for her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, which was still at Lisa's house. I drove over to retrieve it using my spare key while they slept off their Christmas hangover. What I found inside made me grateful I'd brought my camera. The house was a disaster. Empty bottles everywhere, drug paraphernalia on the coffee table, Emma's bedroom door equipped with a new lock, on the outside. They'd been locking her in her room. I photographed everything, my hands shaking with rage. In Lisa's bedroom, I found documents that made my blood freeze. Credit applications with Emma's forged signature. Bank statements showing withdrawals from an account I'd set up for Emma's college fund, an account Lisa wasn't supposed to have access to. They'd stolen over $15,000 from their own 5-year-old daughter. But the worst discovery was Derek's computer, left open to an email thread. He was selling photos of Emma to online predators. My granddaughter's innocent bath time pictures, her sleeping in pajamas, casual photos I'd sent to Lisa, all monetized by this monster. I called Frank immediately. "We need FBI involvement now," I said, my voice steady despite the horror. "This goes beyond state crimes." "I'm on my way," he said. "Don't touch anything else. We need federal evidence protocols." While waiting, I found one more thing that changed everything. A handwritten note from Derek to Lisa. "When the old lady dies, we get the house and the life insurance. Just need to wait a little longer, then we can dump the kid and live free." They weren't just abusing Emma. They were planning to abandon her the moment I died, after stealing my estate. I photographed the note, feeling something cold and determined settle in my chest. Lisa and Derek had underestimated more than just my willingness to protect Emma. They'd underestimated exactly what a retired educator with 40 years of experience dealing with bureaucracy could accomplish when properly motivated. The FBI arrived 30 minutes later. Agent Maria Santos was younger than I expected, but carried herself with the authority of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. She studied the evidence I'd compiled while FBI techs secured Derek's computer and the financial documents. "Mrs. Patterson, what you've uncovered represents multiple federal violations," she said. "Identity theft, exploitation of a minor, interstate trafficking of child exploitation material, wire fraud. We're looking at decades in prison for both defendants." The word defendants hit me like ice water. Lisa wasn't just my troubled daughter anymore. She was a federal criminal who'd exploited her own child for money. I watched through the window as neighbors gathered to see FBI agents carrying boxes from my daughter's house. Emma was safe at my house with Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor who used to run the daycare center. I told her grandma had to handle some grown-up problems, but would be back soon. She didn't need to see her mother being arrested. "The photos we found," Agent Santos continued, "show evidence of systematic exploitation. Your granddaughter was being sold to predators online for over 6 months. The financial crimes spanned 2 years. This was organised, calculated abuse. My phone buzzed constantly. Lisa calling from the police station, Derek's family demanding answers, reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the FBI raid. I ignored them all. There was only one call that mattered. Patricia Williamson. Margaret, emergency custody has been approved. Emma is legally yours until trial. But there's something else. Lisa named you as Emma's guardian in her will, but she also took out a life insurance policy on Emma with herself and Derek as beneficiaries. The implications hit me like a freight train. They'd not only been exploiting Emma, they'd been planning to profit from her death. I sat down heavily, finally understanding the true depth of their evil. "How long have you known my daughter was capable of this?" I asked Patricia. "I've suspected something for months. The financial irregularities, the way she talked about Emma like she was a burden, her questions about your estate planning. I should have said something sooner." But I was already past blame. I was focused on justice. Lisa looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, sitting beside a public defender who clearly knew this case was unwinnable. Derek sat separately with his own attorney, both of them having been denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of charges. I sat in the gallery holding Emma's hand, having explained in age-appropriate terms that Mommy had made some bad choices and needed time to think about them. Emma seemed more confused than upset, a heartbreaking indication of how normalised dysfunction had become in her young life. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney James Chen, Dr. Chen's husband as it turned out, read the charges aloud. Conspiracy to commit identity theft, exploitation of a minor, child endangerment, wire fraud, conspiracy to distribute child exploitation material. The list went on for 5 minutes. Lisa kept turning to look at me, her eyes pleading. But I felt nothing except determination to see justice done. This was the same woman who'd locked her daughter outside in freezing weather while she partied, who'd sold photos of that same child to predators, who'd stolen from her college fund. When the judge asked if the defendants understood the charges, Derek actually smirked. "This is all a misunderstanding, Your Honour. My girlfriend's mother is just trying to get custody of our daughter." The judge's expression could have frozen water. "Mr. Morrison, you're facing 47 federal charges, including conspiracy to distribute child exploitation material. I suggest you take this more seriously." Lisa finally spoke. "Your Honour, I love my daughter. I would never hurt her." Her voice broke on the last word, and for just a moment I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. But then I remembered Emma's blue lips, her frost-bitten toes, the lock on the outside of her bedroom door. "Bail denied for both defendants," the judge declared, "trial set for March 15th. As they led my daughter away in shackles, she shouted, "Mum, please! You know I'm not really like this. It was all Derek's idea." I stood up and looked her directly in the eyes. "You left your daughter outside to freeze, Lisa. Everything else is just details." "Former school principal saves granddaughter from exploitation ring." The headline appeared on every major news outlet. My quiet retirement had become a national story about child abuse, family betrayal, and an elderly woman fighting the system. My phone hadn't stopped ringing in 3 days. Interview requests from CNN, NBC, 60 Minutes, Dr. Phil. Book agents wanting to represent my story of courage. I declined them all. This wasn't about fame, it was about protecting Emma and ensuring justice was served. But the media attention served a purpose I hadn't expected. Other victims started coming forward. Parents whose children had been exploited by Derek's network. Women who'd been manipulated by Lisa's sob stories and scammed out of money. The FBI opened 14 additional cases. Emma and I established a routine. Mornings at my kitchen table with homeschool lessons I designed around her interests. Afternoons at the park or library, slowly building her confidence around other children. Evenings with stories and warm milk, teaching her that bedtimes could be peaceful instead of fearful. "Grandma Margaret," she said one evening, "why did Mommy do bad things?" I'd prepared for this question with help from child psychologists. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people they're supposed to protect. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means Mommy was sick in her thinking. Will she get better? I looked at this resilient little girl who'd survived more trauma than most adults and felt my heart break. I don't know, sweetheart. But I know you're safe now, and you're going to grow up surrounded by people who truly love you. That night, I received an unexpected call. Mrs. Patterson, this is Governor Williams. I wanted to personally thank you for your courage in exposing this exploitation network. Would you consider serving on our task force for protecting vulnerable children? I looked at Emma sleeping peacefully in her bed. The first time in months she hadn't had nightmares, and felt something new stirring inside me, not just protective anger but purposeful determination. Yes, I said. I'd be honoured. The woman sitting across from me in the coffee shop looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. Mrs. Patterson, I saw you on the news. I have information about your daughter, but I'm scared to come forward. Sarah Mitchell was Derek's ex-girlfriend from 2 years ago. She'd escaped his manipulation but lived in fear that he'd retaliate. What she told me explained so much about how Lisa had been drawn into his web. Derek targets single mothers with children, she said. He studies their vulnerabilities, financial stress, loneliness, desperation for help. He love bombs them, moves in quickly, then gradually isolates them from family and friends. How does he make money from the children? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Photos at first, sold to collectors online, then private video calls where the children perform innocent activities. The mothers usually don't know initially. He tells them it's for a modelling agency or child acting portfolio. My stomach churned. How many children? At least 12 that I know of. Emma was his most profitable because she was so young and trusting. Sarah's voice broke. My son Tommy was 7 when Derek started using him. He's in therapy now, but the damage... I reached across the table and took her hand. We're going to stop him. All of them. Will you testify? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Agent Santos already contacted me. There are 6 other mothers ready to testify. Derek kept detailed records, financial spreadsheets showing exactly how much each child earned him. After Sarah left, I sat in my car processing this information. Lisa hadn't been an innocent victim gradually corrupted. The evidence suggested she'd known exactly what Derek was doing and participated willingly for the money. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Drop the charges or Emma won't be safe. We know where you live. I forwarded it immediately to Agent Santos, then drove straight to the police station. Frank Morrison was waiting for me. Margaret, Derek's associates are getting desperate. We're arranging protection for you and Emma. He handed me a small device. Panic button. FBI response time is under 3 minutes. That evening, as unmarked cars positioned themselves around my neighbourhood, I realised this case had become bigger than just protecting my granddaughter. We were dismantling an entire criminal network. But the real battle was just beginning. The federal courthouse was packed with media and victims' families. I sat in the front row with Emma colouring quietly beside me, surrounded by FBI security. Lisa and Derek were brought in separately, both looking haggard after 3 months in federal detention. Prosecutor James Chen opened with devastating efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next 2 weeks, you will hear evidence of the systematic exploitation of children by an organised criminal enterprise. The defendants didn't just abuse one child. They operated a sophisticated network that victimised dozens of vulnerable children for profit. The first witness was FBI digital forensics expert Dr. Ashley Park. She presented Derek's computer files, thousands of photos and videos of children, detailed financial records showing over $200,000 in profits, and chat logs with purchasers discussing specific children by name. The defendant Morrison maintained detailed spreadsheets, Dr. Park testified, tracking which children generated the most revenue, what types of content sold best, and strategic plans for expanding the operation. Lisa's attorney objected repeatedly, trying to portray her as another victim of Derek's manipulation, but the prosecution was ready. They showed Lisa's own text messages. "Emma was so good today, made us $800. The buyers love her innocence. She's our little gold mine." During a recess, Lisa's mother, my former mother-in-law, approached me in the hallway. "Margaret, surely you can see Lisa was brainwashed. She would never hurt Emma intentionally." I looked at this woman who'd enabled Lisa's selfishness since childhood. "Janet, your daughter locked Emma outside in freezing weather for 5 hours while she partied. She sold photos of Emma to pedophiles. There's no excuse for any of it." "But she's still your daughter." "No," I said quietly. "Emma is my daughter now." Lisa made her choice. The afternoon brought Sarah Mitchell's testimony. She was calm and credible, explaining Derek's manipulation tactics and Lisa's eager participation once the money started flowing. "Ms. Patterson wasn't a victim," she stated clearly. "She was an enthusiastic partner who often suggested new ways to exploit Emma." I watched the jury's faces. They believed her. They could see through Lisa's tears to the calculating predator beneath. Derek's defense strategy became clear during cross-examination: blame everything on Lisa, while portraying himself as a reformed man who'd made mistakes. But the prosecution's next witness destroyed that narrative completely. Dr. Michael Torres, the FBI's behavioral analysis expert, took the stand looking grim. "In my 15 years analysing predatory behaviour, I've rarely seen such calculated exploitation. The defendant Morrison maintained what he called child portfolios, detailed files on each victim including psychological profiles, family vulnerabilities, and revenue projections." The courtroom was silent as Dr. Torres read from Derek's personal notes. "Emma Patterson, age 5, mother Lisa desperate for money and validation, grandmother wealthy but naive, child extremely compliant due to prior neglect, highest earning potential due to appearance and age." I felt Emma shift beside me and realised she was listening. I quietly took her to the hallway, where victim advocates were waiting with activities. She didn't need to hear how she'd been commodified by her own mother. When I returned, Derek's attorney was cross-examining Dr. Torres. "Isn't it possible my client was documenting these observations for law enforcement as part of an undercover operation?" Dr. Torres looked at him like he'd suggested pigs could fly. "Counselor, your client was depositing payments from child exploitation material into multiple offshore accounts. He purchased a new BMW with profits from selling Emma Patterson's photos. This was not a law enforcement operation." The prosecution's final witness was Agent Santos herself. She walked the jury through the complete investigation, from my initial call about Emma's frostbite to the international network of predators they'd uncovered through Derek's customer list. "The defendant's operation was sophisticated and expanding rapidly," she testified. "We identified victims in 14 states and seized evidence of plans to recruit children from foster care systems and homeless shelters." Lisa's attorney made one last desperate play during cross-examination. "Agent Santos, isn't it true that Mrs. Patterson had custody disputes with her daughter before these charges were filed?" "No, Counselor. Mrs. Patterson had never sought custody of Emma before discovering her granddaughter's exploitation. In fact, she'd been giving her daughter financial support despite red flags about the child's welfare." I watched Lisa's face crumble as her last hope of portraying me as the villain evaporated. The truth was simple. She'd sold her daughter's innocence for money, and I'd stopped her. The prosecution rested their case with overwhelming evidence, but Derek's defense was about to play their final card. Derek's attorney called Lisa as their star witness, clearly hoping she'd take full responsibility and save his client from life in prison. It was a spectacular miscalculation. Lisa took the stand wearing a conservative blue dress, looking every inch the reformed mother. Her attorney led her through a rehearsed story about being manipulated and controlled by Derek, gradually discovering his true nature, trying to protect Emma while trapped in an abusive relationship. "I never wanted to hurt my daughter," she said, tears flowing freely. Derek threatened me if I didn't cooperate. He said he'd kill Emma if I went to the police. It might have been believable if the prosecution hadn't already presented her enthusiastic text messages about Emma's earnings. When Prosecutor Chen stood for cross-examination, his expression was deadly calm. "Ms. Patterson, you testified that Derek threatened to kill Emma if you didn't cooperate. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." "Yet according to phone records, you called Derek 16 times on Christmas Eve, begging him to come to your party. Does that sound like the behavior of someone afraid for their child's life?" Lisa's composure cracked slightly. He manipulated me psychologically. I wasn't thinking clearly." Chen approached the evidence table and lifted a thick folder. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Defense Exhibit A, the defendant's personal journal, seized from her residence during the search." My blood froze. Lisa had kept a journal throughout this nightmare? Chen opened to a marked page and read aloud. "December 23rd. Derek says the Christmas buyers are paying premium rates. Emma looked so cute in the red pajamas. We made $500 just from photos today. Should buy her some new outfits for New Year's shoots." The courtroom erupted. Lisa's face went white as Chen continued reading entry after entry documenting her eager participation, her ideas for new content, her excitement about the money. "December 24th. Mum's being suspicious again, asking too many questions about Emma's bruises. Need to keep her away until we can move somewhere new. Derek found buyers willing to pay $5,000 for video content. Emma's almost ready." I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, unable to hear any more. In the hallway, I found Emma playing with blocks, completely absorbed and peaceful. This beautiful child had no idea her own mother had been planning to sell videos of her abuse. Agent Santos followed me out. "Margaret, are you all right?" "She was planning to make films," I said, my voice hollow. "Of Emma." "We know. The journal entries provided enough evidence for additional trafficking charges. Lisa's looking at life without parole now." When I returned to the courtroom, Derek's attorney was trying desperately to redirect, claiming the journal was fabricated or coerced, but the handwriting analysis was conclusive, and the entries matched perfectly with financial deposits and communication records. Lisa's breakdown on the witness stand was complete. She screamed at the prosecutor, claimed the journal was Derek's idea, then finally admitted the truth. "I needed the money. Do you know how expensive it is to raise a child alone?" The judge had to call a recess, as Lisa continued ranting about her financial struggles, completely oblivious to how she was destroying any remaining sympathy. Derek sat at his table shaking his head, realizing his co-defendant had just ensured they'd both spend life in prison. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I spent that time in the courthouse cafeteria with Emma, working on a puzzle and trying to stay calm. Other victims' families surrounded us, all waiting for justice. When court reconvened, the foreman stood with the verdict form. "On the count of conspiracy to distribute child exploitation material, we find the defendant Derek Morrison guilty. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendant Derek Morrison guilty." Guilty on all 47 counts. The reading took 12 minutes. Lisa's verdict was equally decisive. 41 guilty verdicts, including the additional trafficking charges based on her journal entries. She collapsed at the defense table as the reality hit her. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month, but Judge Williams addressed the courtroom before dismissing. "These crimes represent a betrayal of the most fundamental duty adults have to protect children. The defendants will spend the rest of their lives in federal prison, ensuring they can never again harm innocent children." Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions at me. I stopped on the courthouse steps, Emma holding my hand, and made the only statement I planned to give. "Justice was served today, but our work isn't finished. Emma and I will be starting a foundation to help other children recover from exploitation and abuse. This experience taught me that evil exists, but it also taught me that ordinary people can fight back and win." That evening, Agent Santos called with updates. Derek's customer list led to arrests in 12 countries. Over 40 children have been rescued from similar situations. Lisa's journal provided evidence that helped convict 6 other predators. I looked at Emma sleeping peacefully in her bed. Truly peaceful now, without fear or trauma haunting her dreams. We'd not only saved her, we'd helped save dozens of other children. But the most satisfying call came from Patricia Williamson. "Margaret, the adoption papers are finalised. Emma is legally your daughter now. Lisa and Derek both signed away their parental rights as part of their plea agreements. Emma was mine. Forever. Safe and loved and protected. The battle was over. But the healing was just beginning." 6 months later, Emma and I stood in the lobby of the Patterson Foundation for Child Protection, watching construction workers put up our sign. The building had been purchased with funds from my life insurance policy, money Lisa and Derek had planned to steal after my death. "Grandma Margaret, will other kids like me come here?" Emma asked, still processing her role in creating something positive from her trauma. "Yes, sweetheart. Kids who need help feeling safe again. Just like you did." Emma had been in therapy with Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a specialist in childhood trauma recovery. The progress was remarkable. Nightmares reduced, trust slowly rebuilding, genuine laughter returning to her voice. She'd started calling me Mom naturally, without any prompting or pressure. The foundation would provide comprehensive services, therapy, legal advocacy, safe housing, and educational support for children recovering from exploitation. We'd partnered with the FBI to develop training programs for identifying abuse networks. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Santos. "Derek Morrison found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide. Note left apologising to victims." I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not sadness, just a sense of one chapter closing. Lisa's life sentence meant she'd never threaten Emma again. Her letters begging for forgiveness went unanswered and eventually stopped coming. Some wounds don't heal, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some people don't deserve second chances. Emma had started kindergarten at the local elementary school, making friends easily once she learned to trust that adults would protect her. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd helped care for her during the crisis, said she was exceptionally bright and kind. "She has this amazing ability to help other children who are scared or upset," Mrs. Rodriguez told me during our conference. "It's like she understands fear better than most kids, so she knows how to comfort others." That evening, Emma and I sat on our front porch watching the sunset. "Mom," she said, still made my heart skip when she called me that, "I'm glad the bad things happened." The statement shocked me. "Why, honey?" "Because if they didn't happen, we wouldn't have our foundation to help other kids, and you wouldn't be my real mom now." Out of the mouths of babes. A year after the trial, I received a call that changed everything again. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Senator Catherine Webb from the House Judiciary Committee. We're drafting federal legislation to strengthen penalties for child exploitation networks. Would you testify before Congress?" Standing at the podium in the Capitol building, looking out at senators and representatives, I thought about that Christmas morning when I found Emma shivering on the porch. If someone had told me then that this journey would lead to federal testimony, I'd have thought they were insane. "Honourable members of Congress," I began, "child exploitation is not a crime of passion or desperation. It's a calculated business that preys on society's most vulnerable members. The predators who hurt my granddaughter viewed her as a product to be sold." I spoke for 20 minutes about the need for mandatory minimum sentences, better coordination between agencies, and resources for victim recovery. But the most powerful moment came when I shared Emma's story directly. My granddaughter was 5 years old when her mother locked her outside in 18-degree weather while partying inside with friends. That same mother had been selling photos of Emma to predators for months, stealing from her college fund and planning to abandon her completely after my death. The room was completely silent. But Emma survived. She's thriving. She's in 2nd grade now, loves art class and wants to be a teacher like her grandmother. She helped design our foundation's logo, a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, representing transformation and hope. The legislation passed unanimously 3 months later. The Emma Patterson Child Protection Act increased penalties for exploitation networks and provided federal funding for victim recovery programs. Emma attended the signing ceremony at the White House, wearing her best dress and carrying her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts. President Harris knelt to Emma's level and said, "Thank you for being so brave, sweetheart. You've helped protect thousands of other children." Emma whispered back, "My mum says bad things can become good things if you work really hard." The president looked at me over Emma's head with tears in her eyes. "Your mum is very wise." That night, in our hotel room overlooking the Washington Monument, Emma asked, "Are we famous now?" "No, honey. We're just people who decided to fight back when bad things happened. Anyone can do that." 3 years after that Christmas morning, I received an unexpected visitor. The woman at my door was thin, prematurely aged, wearing prison transportation shackles and accompanied by 2 federal marshals. "Hello, Mum." Lisa looked like she'd aged 15 years in 3. Prison had been hard on her, and rumours suggested other inmates didn't look kindly on child abusers. I felt no satisfaction in her obvious suffering, but no sympathy either. Lisa. I didn't invite her in. Emma was at school and Lisa had no legal right to see her anyway. "I'm being transferred to a medical facility," she said. "Cancer. They say I have maybe 6 months." I waited for her to continue. I wanted to apologise, to try to explain. Her voice trailed off as she realised there were no words that could bridge this chasm. "You sold your daughter to pedophiles," I said quietly. "You locked her outside to freeze while you partied. You stole from her college fund. You planned to abandon her after my death. There's nothing to explain." "I was sick, Mom. Mentally ill. Derek manipulated me." "Stop." My voice was firm. "Derek didn't manipulate you into anything. Your journal entries showed you were an eager participant who gave him ideas. You're here because you're dying and want forgiveness to make yourself feel better." Lisa started crying. "Please, I'm your daughter. I made mistakes, but I'm still your little girl." I looked at this broken woman and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity, but not forgiveness. My little girl died the night she chose money over her daughter's safety. Emma is my daughter now, and she's thriving without you. Can I see her? Just once?" "No. Emma doesn't ask about you anymore. She's happy and safe and loved. Your presence would only hurt her." Lisa sobbed harder. "I'll never see my baby again." "You stopped being her mother the day you started exploiting her. I became her mother the day I decided to protect her." The marshals stepped forward, indicating the visit was over. As they led Lisa back to the transport van, she turned once more. "Will you tell her I'm sorry?" I considered lying, saying yes to give her comfort, but Lisa had forfeited the right to comfort when she forfeited the right to be Emma's mother. "No," I said. "Some actions can't be apologised away. Some betrayals are permanent." That evening I told Emma that her birth mother had died in prison. She was quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Should I be sad?" "You can feel however you want to feel, sweetheart. There's no wrong way to react." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I feel sorry for her, but not sad. Is that okay?" "That's perfectly okay.